The following is a special presentation of the Decibel Geek podcast.
Keep everything in the hallway for about 5 minutes. Let's change for a second. Right back in. Anybody in there?
How did it sound?
Man,
sounds great, dude.
Did it?
The crowd was so mellow, though.
I know.
Fucking so.
You guys don't
My
think
voice on top?
I have heard.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, that's fucking rad.
This is the Decibel Geek podcast with Aaron Camaro and Chris Sinzak.
It's time for the toughest podcast in the freaking world. That's right, time for the Decibel Geek podcast. My name is Aaron Camaro, joined as always by my good friend Chris Sinzak. What's up, brother?
Good to see you. This is a big week for you.
This is pretty damn awesome, you know. When the concept of Albums Unleashed first came up, you know, immediately I'm thinking about, wow, what are some of my favorite albums that would just be amazing to do an Albums Unleashed with? I'm super excited because this is one of those albums, man. Tuff's What Comes Around Goes Around from 1991. We've got an awesome guest today. Stevie Rachelle himself is coming on the show, and he's going to tell us all about this album, and man, am I stoked.
Absolutely. It's going to be a fun one. All right, we ready to do this?
I'm ready to rock and roll, man. I'm so excited. Here it is, Albums Unleashed, Stevie Rachelle, What Comes Around Goes Around.
Big fan of skateboarding, and growing up in Wisconsin, of all places, it's kind of an odd place to become a skateboarder, but I was, and that started in probably the early mid-'70s. Before I was 10 years old, I was skateboarding, and by the time I was 12 or 13, we had already graduated to building ramps and quarter pipes and half pipes, and having those kind of next level things going on. It wasn't like we were just like, hey, let me sidewalk surf down the street. We were building big ramps with vert and drop-ins, and so my music exposure by doing that was all punk and new wave and all the stuff that skaters were listening to. The Clash, Devo, the Boomtown Rats, 999, the Surf Punks, I guess at one point Black Flag, JFA, all that kind of stuff.
All bands that you would associate with Tuff.
Yeah, well, not really. But, so, at one point, late in high school, like late junior year going into my senior year, a lot of my friends were listening to Loverboy, Def Leppard's Pyromania had come out. It was all over the radio. A bunch of fans were into Ozzy and Rush and Quiet Riot, and I think Twisted Sister were starting to become, those heavy metal bands that were getting played on MTV more. But I was still into my Billy Idol and all that kind of stuff. But at one point, my friends, some of us skateboarded, some of us rode BMX bikes, but there was also a couple of guys that had a guitar and a guy that had a drum set. These guys were starting to go like, hey, we're going to Dan's house on Saturday. We're going to jam in his basement or so-and-so's garage. I started hanging around with some of those people more, going to these garage jams and stuff, and people were playing Judas Priest songs, and I didn't really know a lot about those bands, but when they started playing Livin' After Midnight, I was like, oh yeah, I know this song. I've heard it on WAPL, which was the local rock station in Appleton. Yeah. And then I remember there was a local concert promoter that was selling tickets to Ozzy, and the opening act was Motley Crue, which I didn't know that at the time, but my friend said they were going to go to Ozzy, and there's only one thing that I knew about Ozzy. What do you think that was?
That he bit the head off a bat.
Yeah, he eats bats, exactly. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's the guy that eats bats. Cool, I'll go. And the concert ticket was like $10 or $12, something just really, looking back, that's insane.
Right.
But, so I agreed to go to see Ozzy with my friends, and Motley Crue was the opener. Now, this is in March of '84, and I was a senior in high school, and so I went to that concert just going to see the guy eat bats or whatever. I probably didn't know a single Ozzy song.
Wow.
If somebody would have asked me what band he was in before, at that point, I probably wouldn't have been able to answer it. I probably wouldn't have known it was Black Sabbath. I was not a metal guy at all. I knew nothing about it. But when Motley Crue came out and took the stage, and I saw Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee and Vince Neil and Mick Mars in their Shout at the Devil era gala get-up clothing, screaming red hot and looks that kill, and I became obsessed instantly. The next day I went home and I wanted to be in Motley Crue or whatever so bad. And then a few months later, Van Halen came. Now, I knew who Van Halen was. It was the guy that played the guitar with the electrician's tape all over it, and the singer was that guy that could jump and do the splits off the drum riser. But again, if you would have said list 5 Van Halen songs, I probably would have maybe known they did You Really Got Me, and didn't even really probably know it was a cover song at that point, But I went to that show, and I was blown away by Van Halen with David Lee Roth, and then, then shortly after that it was Rat, and then I just became obsessed, like beyond obsessed. I was buying Helix and Black and Blue and Crocus and Wasp, and any record that looked remotely like what Motley Crue at some point became in my head. That was like my fucking calling from then on forward on a daily basis. That's all I did is consumed heavy metal and hard rock and whatever you want to call it, Soon after that, those garage jams turned into me getting on the microphone. Then I started playing in a couple local bands. The main one was Exciter. We played some shows. We got in the WAPL Battle of the Bands. We won like the teen round. Then we went to the next round. And I say teen round because at this point I was probably 19, and a couple of the guys weren't even at age, maybe like 17 years old. We were playing bars. At one point, I think our drummer was 16. I played around there for probably 2 years, maybe a little bit more. I was determined at that point that I knew that I wasn't staying there beyond a certain point, even though I grew up there and lived pretty much my whole life there at that point. And so in June of '87, I bought a one-way ticket to California.
Man.
So just you on your own, the whole band didn't go?
No.
How much money do you move to LA on?
Less than $200, maybe $150 in my pocket. But I had a friend, a girl that I knew that was from Milwaukee that lived up in Van Nuys, and I ended up staying with her, at least for the first couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. There was basically some unknown. Like, for all I know, she could have got pissed and kicked me out a month later, and I could have been homeless. But, I met the band within a week of being there. I reached out to them. See, as you guys might know, or some of the fans might know, Tuff was already an established band for a couple of years, meaning they were already together.
Yep.
Originally from Phoenix, had played the Phoenix scene for a year or two, and they had moved to L.A. in the fall of '86. with Jim Gillette as their singer. And they played 4 shows with Jimmy in L.A. In the fall of '86, they played, I believe, the Country Club. They played the Troubadour. They might have played the Roxy. And then the last show they ever played with Jim was in May of '87 at Gazzari's. Mm-hmm. And he left the band because he wanted to do a more heavy band, more screaming, more fast guitars. And they didn't want that. They wanted to stick to the party rock kind of thing that they were doing. Yeah. And so basically Jim left the band, which left Tuff with no singer. So they started advertising sometime around just after he had quit the band that they were looking for a singer. And a friend of mine from Wisconsin had visited L.A. for a couple of weeks on a trip and then came home with a bunch of flyers, magazines, and in that stack of stuff he brought home was a Tuff flyer that said wanted lead singer. And it was like a picture of Todd, a picture of Michael, a picture of George, and then an empty square said, wanted lead singer, David Lee Roth, Vince Neil, Bret Michaels, and I saw that and I was like, hey, that's me. So Thursday, the following week of getting the flyer, 6 days later, I flew here, and then the girl that I was staying with took me with her friends to the Troubadour on that first Friday night, and I saw Angora, which was John Corabi's band.
Right.
And I met him and a bunch of those guys that night, and like she was just like, this is my friend Steve, he's from Wisconsin, he's coming out here because he's going to audition for a band, and blah, blah, blah. And so then I think it was like over the weekend, I called that same studio and I said, hey, this is Steve from Wisconsin. I called like a week and a half ago or whatever, 8 days ago, about this audition for Tuff. Can you let them know I'm in California? And so then it was a couple days after that, Michael had called me, Michael the drummer, and I just remember one of the first things he asked me, the most important question. What do you think it was?
How long is your hair?
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh,
how long is your hair? You know? And then he said, what do you look like? And I said, well, everybody says I look like the guy from Poison, which at this point, Poison had already started to get really big.
Yeah.
But I had been, David Lee Roth or a Vince Neil wannabe is what I thought I was for a couple of years. And then as Poison became huge, everybody's like, you look like the guy from Poison. I'm like, yeah, I know. I've been fucking hearing that ever since their song got on the radio. Anyways, I meet Tuff. We have a match made in heaven. We hung out for a day or two. I rehearsed with them. And honestly, if I do remember right, they didn't tell me I had the gig after the first rehearsal. Because the first rehearsal really wasn't like a rehearsal. It was kind of like, I remember they invited me, but like Jim Gillette was there, and another guy was there that was singing with them, that was supposedly going to be their new singer.
Oh.
But the guy didn't work out, and then I remember Jimmy was there, and then he got up and sang some songs with them, and I was just there kind of like meeting them. I'd already met them, but I kind of like was just watching and hanging out with some girls or something. It was kind of weird.
That is strange.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
You know? They said, hey, we're going to do a rehearsal with you on Thursday. Like, this might have been a Wednesday night or something, or the following Sunday or something. And so then I just kind of had to wait around. And then after I rehearsed, they wanted to have a meeting with themselves outside, meaning Todd, George, and Michael. So they, like, had their little meeting and then came in and told me I was their lighting man or something and started laughing, which was supposed to be, I was like, yeah, okay, real funny. But then it was off to the races,
Yeah.
At that point, I was probably the oldest guy involved. So if we're talking the summer of 89, I was 23, Todd and George were 22, Michael was 21, Michael was the youngest, and our crew were like between 16 and 20. So there was like 8 guys on a tour bus going across America. And I was the oldest person at 23. And, I mean, talk about giving, a bunch of guys a license to kill. It's, the stories you read about Motley Crue and Van Halen and all that kind of stuff on the road in the heyday, I'm sure it was insane with that level of success because I know what we did, and we were just a little glam rock club band from L.A. But the fact that we were from Hollywood and in a tour bus and doing the things we did and looking the way we looked and, the Motley Crues and the Guns N' Roses and the Poisons were exploding and Skid Row. So we were just like the next in line to be that cool bunch of long-haired, perverted, drinking, drugging rock stars coming down the road,
Right.
Yes. Well, now finally Atlantic comes around. You got the opportunity to at least go in and record an album finally. That's got to feel good.
What a lot of people don't get is they think, oh my God, you're on Atlantic Records. Oh my God, you're playing Santa Monica Civic Center. Oh my God, you're in a tour bus. Oh my God, look at your video. The video is only 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. The show is only 1 hour long. That record that's in the bin, like unless somebody's standing there and you pick it up and go, hey, guess what? This is me. You should buy this right now. Hundreds of people walked in a music store every day in 1991, but they went to buy Right Said Fred, or they went to buy fucking Janet Jackson, or fucking, they didn't care about hair bands or heavy metal or rock and roll. So getting to do that record is a good thing, and it's an experience, but it's also, in looking back, the way that Howard produced us, and he sat in a rehearsal room and said, well, let's do this song or that song. And we're like, well, this is our greatest song. We're going to play you this one. And then him going, okay, what else? Okay, well, this is a really good song too. Okay, well, what else? Like, and so we're playing him literally like 30 songs, you know, like an A list of our top 10 songs, and then a B list of our next best 10 songs, and then a next list of like our best 8 or 10 ideas. So at one point, Howard gets to go, okay, well, we're going to work on this. We're going to work on these 2. We're going to work on these 2. And we're going to work on these 3. And we're like, well, what about that one? No, we're not going to work on that one. We're all like, oh, my God, you don't like our song?
Well, I'm almost scared to ask you if you want to do the track by track.
Right, yeah.
No, of course. You know, making the record was great, but it's just different than people think, you know? No?
How much of the material that's on the record, how much of that was already worked out when you went in to record it?
What I started to say earlier, we came up with 3 lists. Howard asked us to play him what we thought our best 10 songs were. So there was like 10 songs. Then there was a second list of 10, and then there was an idea list, like songs that we had started to work on that were just ideas. Now, at one point, Todd and George had written pretty much the majority of the music for the songs, with the exception of So Many Seasons and I Hate Kissing You Goodbye, which were more my songs, musically and lyrics and melodies and whatever. But I remember there was an idea that they kept playing, and there was no title or anything for it, but I kept calling it the Dokken idea. And it's because of the way the guitar started out. And the song actually became Ruckapit Bridge, which is the first song on the record. There's that little kind of faint little guitar part where he's kind of like picking with his fingers. It's almost kind of like a George Lynch kind of riff. So I kept calling it the Dokken idea. And that's all it was just an idea that was on the 3rd list on the wall, but it ended up becoming a full song. And not only just a full song, but the opening track, the lead track of the record, which was called Ruckapit Bridge. And people ask me now, what does Ruckapit Bridge mean? Ruckapit Bridge is just kind of a fictitious thing that I made up in my head based on a previous or a former girlfriend's childhood fairy tale. Like, she used to tell me about this fairy tale that she had read about when she was a kid. And it was called like the Cherry Perry Ruckapit or something like that. And at one point when they were playing this idea in the rehearsal room, they're formulating the song and arranging it. I'm sitting there with a pen and paper and singing, I want to take it down to a red bridge. Do you want to go down?
Can you believe it's been so long? Your face is glowing, I need to know it now. One more time, I wanna take you down to the Ruckapit Bridge. Do you wanna go down? You're about to totally stay away from Ruckapit Bridge. Do you wanna go down? Listen to September, time to surrender. Don't need to play.
And so then the idea was to write this song about this bridge. And it's where a guy and, he takes a girl down to this bridge. You think of it as in the park or in some forest, and he's going to go down there and make out with her, or take her pants off, or whatever. The song is about taking a girl somewhere and fooling around with her by the Ruckapit Bridge.
Gotcha.
But that song was really just a Dokken idea, George's guitar riff, and Todd arranged it, and little by little, the song came together.
All right, so then we talked about Ruckapit Bridge, which is an awesome album opener on there, a lot of kick on that song. Then it goes to the All New Generation, which is almost kind of a precursor to American Hair Band a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and what happened with that is that song was originally called Boys Will Be Boys. And if you listen to some old live recordings of us playing live shows, that song used to be called Boys Will Be Boys. And it was a George song. George wrote that music for that track, which I always kind of compared it to like a Kiss song, like Rock and Roll All Night or something. It kind of sounds like a Kiss song.
Totally.
But that song, we liked it musically, but we thought the title Boys Will Be Boys was kind of generic. I think there was probably 5 other songs that were called Boys Will Be Boys at that time, including maybe a Vinnie Vincent song. So we just decided to change it. And then at one point, I came up with the idea to call it the All New Generation. But the original idea for All New Generation was not just music. I was singing about presidents and like famous public figures and people like, I don't know, Richard Nixon, Marilyn Monroe. Like there was a whole bunch of almost kind of like a Billy Joel, we didn't start the fire thing, you know? So I had all these different parts of the songs that sang about different things. And then it was Howard that told me, Howard Benson, said, why don't you just stick to music, okay? Why are we singing about Abraham Lincoln, okay? And just do it about music.
The all-new generation, rock and roll, ego violation. Scream and shout, let it all out, sing it out loud all around the world. The all-new generation, rock and roll is communication. Boys will be boys, as girls girls, singing out loud all around the world. Elvis Presley, Richie, Jerry, Little Richard, Buddy Berry. Oh yeah, yeah. Cooper, Kiss, the Acid, Molly, Poison, Axl, John Bon Jovi, Skid Row, and the Youth Gone Wild.
So he was the one who kind of steered me to say, Stevie, you're all over the place. Let's make the All New Generation be about music. Break it down into music generations. And I was like, okay. And so timing in a bottle and nothing stays the same. Somewhere in the 50s, music made a change. People started pointing when the king began to shake. They called it rock and roll, and it was love or hate. Elvis Presley, Richie, Jerry, Little Richard, Buddy Berry. You know the Beatles had a hard day. I'm not even singing the right melody, but as you hear, I say Elvis Presley, Richard Berry, or Little Richard, Buddy Berry, meaning Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, obviously Little Richard, Elvis Presley. So I'm singing about all the bands from the 50s into the 60s. And then the second verse is The Who, The Doors, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, and Old Van Halen, Aerosmith Told You Walk This Way. And then the third pre-chorus is Cooper, Kiss, The Oz and Motley, Poison, Axl, John Bon Jovi, Skid Row is The Youth Gone Wild. And at that point, this is 1990 when that was written and the recording started. So Skid Row was really only about a year and a half old. And they were, at that point, the all-new generation of rock. Skid Row was the new band, you know, that everybody was gung-ho about.
All right, so, well, that goes into I Hate Kissing You Goodbye, which, you know, obviously this song got a lot of notoriety back in the day, and you were all over MTV for a little bit.
Yeah, and that song was originally demoed by my first band, Exciter, and it was called Kiss the Girl Goodbye. And so when I was in Tuff for the first year or two, we were playing all these different rock songs, but we didn't really have any slow songs or any ballads. And obviously the power ballad was becoming bigger and bigger. I came to the band with 2 different ballads. One was called Kiss the Girl Goodbye, which I decided to kind of rearrange it and change it to I Hate Kissing You Goodbye. And then there was another one called When We Were Young. And we used to play both of those, and those were my songs. But by the time Howard got involved, we had whittled it down to just doing the one, and there was a songwriter named Todd Meager that was working with a songwriting company, a publishing company, I forget which one, but he was brought in, and he listened to us, and he zeroed in on that song and said, I want to help you with that song. So Todd Meager, who at one point also wrote some stuff with, I want to say he did some stuff with Janie as well, Janie Lane, and Pretty Boy Floyd, and maybe a couple other people, maybe Night Ranger. But he came in there and really helped me shape the melody and the lyric to that song. I remember we played that song at a show at the Troubadour in 1990, right when we were getting our deal. And we did I want to say it was a birthday party for Gina B, who was the promoter at the Troubadour. And her birthday's in May, so it would have been May of 90. And Janie Lane actually introduced us that night, and he came up to me afterwards, because we opened our little set with a ballad, that song. And he came up to me, he goes, "Hey man, that's a good tune." And I remember that sticking out, because obviously, years later it became our most popular song at that point.
I suppose if anybody's going to know, coming from Janie Lane, he would know a good ballad when he hears it. For sure. So how does it feel to get some success and some notoriety off this song?
I mean, MTV programming, is responsible for all that. Like at one point, MTV added us into rotation. And then we would get a fax, for anybody that's under 20, they don't probably even know what that is. We get a fax at our management's office on a Monday, and it would say, "Here's the programming list for this week." And our manager would tell us, "Okay, today you're going to be on at 3:05 p.m. The video is going to be on at 7:33 p.m. The video is going to be on at 12:48 a.m. Tomorrow it's going to be on at 1:13 p.m. Like, they would tell us in advance at what time our video was going to be on MTV. So we knew. So then we would, Pacific Standard Time, we'd get home, turn on MTV, and we'd be watching it, and there'd be a Winger video, and all of a sudden, boom, there we are.
Right.
3 minutes and 30 seconds later, it's over. A bunch of people would call us, "Oh my God, I just saw you guys at MTV." And I'm like, "I know, I got to go to work right now." And go back in the moving truck, But it would be like, at that point, it was exciting, but the excitement, I don't want to say it wore off, but it just became like, okay, that's great, but what next?
So moving on to Lonely Lucy. What are your memories of putting this song together?
Here's two memories. One, that's a Todd Chason song, that riff. And I remember when I was writing some lyrics for it, we shared a rehearsal space with Young Guns before they were called Wildside, friends of ours.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember they had a song called "Hang On Lucy." Before I heard the song, I saw it on a set list at the rehearsal studio. I stole the name Lucy and then wrote this song called "Lonely Lucy" about over Todd's track. But that's where I got the idea for the name Lucy. It was a Young Guns Wildside song on a set list in a rehearsal studio, and I started writing this song about this chick who ended up being Lonely Lucy.
Change your name to Lucy, $50 crime. She's a carousel for cash flow. No, if you got the time. Touch her, feel her, whatever's on your mind. Lonely Lucy, she'll sing for you tonight. She got talk downtown, should have been uptown, making you feel alright. Business with my pleasure, mix the passion with the pain. Living for money, or chemicals for the brain. Too bad, so sad. The girl has gone insane. Lonely Lucy, she'll sing for you tonight. She got talk downtown, should have been uptown, making you feel alright. Lonely Lucy, she'll sing for you tonight. Oh, I got the number now, let me show you where now, making you feel alright.
Wildside to this day not know that?
You know what? I think I might have said it one time before, but
Okay.
I'm friends with all of them, so I'm sure Drew, if he's listening to this, will be laughing his head off.
So there's no lawsuit forthcoming or anything like that.
I doubt it. I mean, Hang On Lucy was a bigger hit than Lonely Lucy anyway, so I think they got us there.
Fair
Right
enough.
on. All right, that brings us up to Ain't Worth a Dime. This has got to be one of the most fun songs you ever get to play live.
Yeah, we don't play it that much live anymore. We used to all the time. That's a Todd Chase song. Todd's the riff master. Todd writes the stuff that's a lot more riffy.
Yeah.
Lonely Lucy, Ain't Worth a Dime. That opening riff sounds a lot like Scratch My Back by Roxgang.
Huh. Yeah, I'd have to listen.
So if you listen, especially the demo version of Ain't Worth a Dime.
Little girl, you never did nothing. Earned a reputation, you must have done something. 17 years, what you got to show? Nothing I can do to break your heart or stone. You ain't worth a dime, wasting all my time on you. But baby, yeah, you ain't worth a dime. My time, all my time.
Chase at one point was listening to Roxgang nonstop, so I think he might have lifted part of the riff from them.
Or maybe subconsciously or something.
We're revealing that we've stolen our songs from every other 80s band.
I'm trying to keep you out of court, personally.
Right, yeah, no, this is truly Albums Unleashed, yo. What else have you stolen for this album? All right, that brings us
If you listen to Scratch My Back at the beginning, the initial chords, it sounds like what Ain't Worth a Dime was in the beginning.
Okay.
Well, that's an awesome riff, man. I love that song nonetheless. Okay, that brings us up to a song. This one's really cool, man. In a time where the cheesy ballads are really king, this is a ballad that's got some sort of deeper stuff going on to it, and it's a song called "So Many Seasons."
Yeah, that's one of my songs, and I wrote it about my brother and my father, both who had passed away. And the song is kind of up-tempo and a little poppy, and almost at some points kind of sounds kind of happy singing. It's not meant to be a sad song, but it's about, it's about my brother and my father. So the song is definitely a little bit more, it's definitely a pop song.
Dance like me, now you're leaving. It can't be true. So many years, so little time was spent with you. Whoa, Mom said you'd be proud. Now I wish we could make that true. Yeah, singing this song, I'm praying real hard. Baby, I'll get through. It's been so many seasons. Oh, yeah, yeah. Can't go without a reason. Oh, yeah. It's been so many seasons.
Not everybody knows the story, but if you listen to the words, and there was a solo version I released of it on my first solo album years after the fact. It was all piano and strings, and it's very slow, and so it's a little bit more heartfelt there because you can hear that it's not, this up-tempo kind of upbeat tambourine shaken pop song. And I can tell you that the lyrics for So Many Seasons were written at a laundromat on Sherman Way in North Hollywood, California, as I sat on a washer while my clothes were in the dryer. And I was my ex-girlfriend, my girlfriend at the time was with me. So those lyrics were written at a laundromat.
Inspiration strikes at odd times.
Sure. All right, I guess that brings us up to track number 7, Forever Yours.
Or as I like to call it, the intro to Inappropriate Earl's podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Earl loves this song. Shout out to Inappropriate Earl and Earl Skakel.
It's been so long that I've been waiting. You said you'd love me till the end of time.
This is one of the oldest Tuff songs in the catalog. They originally demoed this with Jimmy. Actually, that's wrong. Well, it is true, but previous to Jimmy, they demoed this song with Terry Fox, which was their singer pre-Jimmy, pre-Jim Gillette, that is. So Forever Yours was demoed like multiple times, and by the time I was in the band, we ended up recording it on in the Warren Croyle sessions, which were in early '89. Recorded at Sunset Sound Factory and mixed at Amigo with Worth a Dime. Forever Yours, we kept the hook, the chorus, but I decided I wanted to rewrite the lyric for the verse and the pre-chorus and all that, so we kind of rearranged it and rewrote it. And as much as certain people like the song, I don't even know why. At the end of the day, most of us didn't like the song, and I'll bet you on the What Comes Around Goes Around tour, we probably didn't play it more than 5 times, and we played probably 100 shows. So it ended up being a song that I really wish we would have recorded something else, but some people like it, some people don't. At this point, we were all going in a little bit of a heavier direction, and for some reason, it's one of the songs that made the top list of tracks that we recorded. But I think we kind of, if there was anything we not that we regretted, but we never played it. We would never play it live again. I don't know. It's just kind of goofy.
I think when you listen to it, you can tell it came from a different version of the group, because it does kind of stick out like not like a sore thumb, because I think it's a good song, but it has a different vibe to it than the other songs do.
Right.
Well, you got to include a song like that, because it's at that time it's always the oddball song that nobody likes that becomes the #1 hit single.
Right.
Well, then after that, track 9, Spit Like This. This is my favorite song on the record. I think the riff on this song is great. I think this is what's the story behind how this one came out?
I think you missed Wake Me Up.
Oh, I missed Wake Me Up.
I was going to say you missed a song.
I did. Well, let's talk about Wake Me Up then.
Well, the thing about Wake Me Up that's kind of weird is that this was not in the original set of songs to record. We recorded that one separately at a separate studio late in the recording session. And for the record, this recording session started on December 26th, 1990, the day after Christmas. So it was kind of a Christmas gift for us. This tape, which I still have to this day, a demo of the song called Wake Me Up that was supposedly written or co-written by Bret Michaels. Mm-hmm. Now, we listened to it, and the first thing all of us said is, that ain't Bret Michaels singing that, and this doesn't sound like Bret Michaels wrote it. That's just what we thought, because it's not 2 or 3 power chord, it's not Every Rose, it's not I Won't Forget You, it's not as simple as those. It's a little bit more intricate with some weird minor note chords and stuff like that. So we thought, well, this definitely isn't Bret singing it. It doesn't sound like something he would or could write. But needless to say, we recorded it anyways. And then I wanted to adjust some of the melody. So at one point, I had to call Bret at a hotel while he was on tour, and I wanted to give him, the idea of what I was doing. So I'm calling Bret and using his code name to get him on the phone, which I had to call this hotel and ask for this certain room number, and his name was Jack Koozie, as in jacuzzi. I swear to God. Wow. I swear to God. So now I'm on the phone with Bret, and I'm strumming this song and singing in the phone my new idea for the melody. And I thought, well, this is kind of weird that I'm calling him and doing this and trying to tell him that I want to change the song, but it's business. We got to get it approved. He's like, oh, that's great, dude. Killer. Awesome. Can't wait. Let's make it happen. So we end up recording the song. And then when the record is released, there was an article in a local magazine out here called Music Connection that the singer for a band called Soul Kitchen was filing a lawsuit because Wake Me Up was his song. Oh, no. And he wanted to know how we got it and why it's crediting Bret Michaels, because it's his song.
Dang.
So then it turns out that the singer from Soul Kitchen had started some kind of a legal process against Tuff or Atlantic Records and Bret Michaels and the publisher, saying, this is not Bret Michaels' song, this is my song. And from what I remember, it was all squashed relatively quickly, that Bret was involved with this guy and did do some co-writes with this guy, but I think this guy was trying to get involved to get his songs placed, and at one point Bret used that song and placed it with us, but somehow the wires got crossed and it got forgotten that some other guy was involved. To the people to this day that still think, and Brett, you worked on a Brett Michaels song. It wasn't Brett's song. It was actually the singer from Soul Kitchen's song that Brett was kind of, I guess the term would be middlemanning, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so as I was saying before, Spit Like This, that's my favorite song on the record.
That's awesome.
And
that's the Todd Chase song.
That dude can write some riffs.
Yeah, it seems like, you know, a lot of my favorite songs, because this is a real kind of a almost half album, you know, where some of it's really hard and heavy, and the other stuff's kind of a little more easy to take. But these heavy ass songs on this album are kick ass. Right.
Well, there's three writers. So Many Seasons and I Kissing Goodbye, which are both very elementary songs. I mean, So Many Seasons is like DAC, DAG, you know, that's my song. Kissing You Goodbye, oddly, same chords, DAC, DACG. So those are my two songs. George's, as I said earlier, were a little bit more of the Judas Priest-esque kind of riffs.
Yeah.
The Good Guys Were Black, All New Generation.
Yeah. Chugga.
That's George's. Chase's, yeah, exactly, the chuggin'. Chase's are the ones that are more busy. Ain't Worth a Dime, Spit Like This, Lonely Lucy, with the riffs going all over the place. That's Chase.
Yeah.
So, and you know, he's obviously back in the band now for almost 10 years.
It's a good variety of with the different writing styles on there, because it's definitely not an album where it's not a one-trick pony album.
Right.
You've got a good mix of things.
Right.
And then you close it out with Good Guys Wear Black.
Well, Good Guys Were Black, I'll tell you how that song came to be. We're at one of our apartments one day, and George is in his bedroom with his practice amp on, and he's just riffing away. And he's jamming in the hallway, you know, in his bedroom, and the hallway doors open, and his guitar is just wailing. And all of a sudden, I hear this killer riff. I'm in my room or in the kitchen, the other end of the apartment. I run back into the room. I go, dude, what was that riff you just played? He's like, what riff, bro? As he's hitting the bong, because George was a pothead. And I'm like, that thing you just played. And so now he starts going back and playing different parts of different songs and riffs that he was jamming. Like, no, not that. No, not that. Not that. That right there. What is that? He's like, I don't know. I'm just jamming. we got to make that into a song. So then he brings that riff to rehearsal. Him and Todd work up a song, and I want to say I think Michael might have come up with the title "Good Guys Wear Black." Michael's a little bit of a Harley guy, the drummer.
Yeah.
He still has a Harley to this day. So he says, like, let's call it "Good Guys Wear Black." So now I'm throwing that lyric around, and we're getting ready to demo, but we were working on the lyrics for "Good Guys Wear Black." And I remember we were in the rehearsal room, and Warren had some ideas for it as well. And he pulled me aside, and he said, come on, let's go out in the hallway and work on this. So we're out in the hallway, and I was singing the lyric. He goes, what is that one line you're singing? I said, the smoke clears all around a cigarette. He's hanging down. He's like, no, not a cigarette. It's got to be a Chesterfield hanging down. He comes and goes without a sound. And I was like, yeah. So now, we're out there fucking in the hallway writing this lyric to the song that we think is going to be the next fucking Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
But kind of small little detail, but kind of cool to think back and look back at when we did that.
All right, here's something I got to ask you about. When I was a kid, a teenager, I guess, we rented a video from the Quick Trip. And it was called
Heavy Metal Thunder and Mud.
Thunder and Mud. I try to tell people about this video. Nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about. Please tell us about Thunder and Mud.
Well, it's there's clips of it on YouTube.
Are there? Awesome. I didn't.
Yeah. Not just first of all, if you search "Tough Good Guys Wear Black," our performance from there is on there. But there's like 2 or 3 clips that are like us backstage with the mud wrestler.
All right, I'm back here in the very surprisingly subdued dressing room of Tuff, where they are in the process of consoling their very, very tough and ever-righteous wrestler, Lauren. She seems to be, a little bit relaxed, but still somewhat upset. How are you guys doing?
Well, Sam, rock and roll is a real tough way of life. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
I hear you, Stevie.
That was one of the greatest things I ever seen. It was like a battle of the bands and a mud wrestling tournament all rolled into one.
It was horrific. But, what's funny is, let me explain to you how that came about.
Yeah.
So, Penelope Skiris was the producer and director of Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years, correct?
Right.
Yes.
You guys remember what that was.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what that is.
Yeah, of course.
So, I was only in the band for a short time, and at one point we were on the Sunset Strip, and Penelope and some video crew comes up to us and says, we want to interview you, we want you to be in our documentary. So we were in it. And then at one point, I'm backtracking a little bit here before we get to the Heavy Metal Thunder and Mud. Penelope says, okay, we're going to interview you. You're the hottest new band on the Strip. We want Tuff. So we're in Decline of Western Civilization. Then Penelope likes our band. And at one point, she contacts us down the road and says, hey, we're filming another thing. we want you guys to be involved. It's called Heavy Metal Thunder and Mud. It's going to be rock bands and mud wrestlers. And Jessica Hahn's going to host it with Bill Gazzari and Hahn Mastery, the Leather Nun from KNAC. And we're going to film it with this backstage, and the mud wrestler represents each band. And, of course, we ended up doing it. And as you guys know, fucking really goofy.
Yeah.
I mean, really hokey. I mean, Decline was kind of hokey, too, but it's still, you know, it at this point, it's kind of a cult classic that people like. But the Heavy Metal Thunder and Mud was really hokey.
Right.
It was like a pay-per-view.
Gotcha.
So then, now we get signed to our Atlantic deal. And Penelope and her people, or whoever, reach out to us and says, Penelope Spheris wants to talk to you guys. She's doing another movie. She wants you guys involved. And we're like, oh, fuck, that's right. We did that last thing. It was fucking totally gay with the fucking, you know, the goofy mud wrestlers, and it was just so cheesy. So we're like, nah, we're signed to Atlantic Records now. We're not interested. So we kind of blew her off. And then 6 months later, her movie comes out, the one that she asked us to be in, and to, like, submit a song for the soundtrack, and it was Wayne's World.
Damn.
Oh, boy.
Oh,
so
man.
we kind of fucked up on that one. So
Boy, I guess.
I mean, is there anything on the album that, in hindsight, you think maybe should have been a single that wasn't?
Well, here's a little info for you. The original single was supposed to be All New Generation. Mm-hmm. And what happened is we played a thing in Phoenix, an outdoor festival show with like Badlands, Bang Tango, South Gang, I don't know, a whole bunch of different bands. It was like a 2 or 3 day festival at this outdoor baseball stadium called Compadre Stadium. And we were going to release All New Generation as our first single. So we went there and we played that show in the early spring of 91. The record came out in May of 91. So they sent a film crew and they filmed us. If you go on YouTube and search Tuff All New Generation, there's a video on YouTube for the All New Generation that's footage that was shot by Atlantic, and I believe her name was Cindy Kiefer and Renegade Films, but it was never edited and never used. Mm-hmm. At one point, fast forward several years later, after the Atlantic deal went away and all that, I got the footage, and then my friend, Sean Card, who actually is the co-creator of Metal Sludge, he edited the All New Generation video together for us. So what was going to happen is the All New Generation was going to be the video single. But K-Bear in Salt Lake and the Blaze in Chicago, sister radio stations, started playing our ballad. And it got a lot of reaction and a lot of phones and became a top request. Mm-hmm. The label came to learn about that, and at the last minute decided to not release All New Generation. Mm-hmm. So they said, stop the presses. We're not going to release All New Generation. We're going to change it, and the band's going to shoot a video for I Ain't Kissing Goodbye. Wow. So they shelved all the footage. Then they rushed, and we did this video for I Ain't Kissing Goodbye, which was a killer video.
Yeah.
They put it out, and when they released the video, or when they released the single, the first set of singles went to the stores, because this is when they were selling singles.
Right, yeah.
And all the singles had artwork for I Ain't Kissing Goodbye, New Power Ballad by Tuff, blah, 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 A-side, B-side, whatever. But Atlantic fucked up, and all the cassette singles where the I Ain't Kissing Goodbye song was supposed to be on, they put All New Generation on it.
Oh, wow.
So the artwork for the singles was for Kissing You Goodbye, and the B-side, which is, I don't even know, maybe Wake Me Up or So Many Seasons or something.
Yeah.
But the main song that was being advertised was not on the single.
Damn.
So then they had to recall all the singles.
Jesus.
And obviously, then the video came out, and the video did get its fair share of airplay on MTV. Mm-hmm. And then, at the end of the year, they decided they wanted to do another video, and it was going to be for So Many Seasons.
You almost got to lead with that heavy song as the first single. So
Absolutely.
That way, you know, the guys know that you're cool. So then when you hit them with the ballad, you're not blindsiding nobody. You know, so I can see how, you know, you'd be like, yeah, we don't want to be known as just a ballad band. You want to put it out there that the dudes can dig us too, you know? I totally agree. Yeah. But this was Atlantic Records 27 years ago, doing what they wanted to do, you know? Wow. But I agree with you guys. I mean, you know, we thought the same thing. We wanted to have a heavy song first, or
a rock song. But, I mean, at one point we get to really only release the ballad.
Right.
And that's all people kind of just thought for the longest time. Okay, these guys are like Nelson, or these guys are just pop ballads. And then they come see us live and hear Ain't Worth a Dime and Lonely Lucy and Good Guys Were Black and Spit Like This and go, holy fuck, what is all this?
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is awesome, man. We got a lot of cool insight to not just the making of the album, What Comes Around Goes Around, and the experiences of Stevie Rachelle starting out as a kid in Wisconsin and making his way up to be one of the most popular bands on the Strip. We just got to all around look into the weird record industry back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool, man. We appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. And for anybody that doesn't know, Stevie's got all kinds of places you can get Tuff music all the way back. This guy has got it. He releases stuff that's from the archives. If you are not already a Tuff fan and you're just discovering them and you're digging them, one thing I can say about Stevie Rachelle, as a Tuff fan myself, I really appreciate that you still continue to release like the old demos and stuff that, maybe didn't make these albums, because there's some really cool demo stuff that you've come out with over the years that I thought, man, these songs should have been on albums. But I appreciate that you release that stuff.
Yeah, and that's appreciated. I mean, if anybody wants, Google us, or Google Tuff, or me, eBay, Amazon, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Stevie Tuff, or just Google the name Tuff, Tuff. We have all our music out there. There's lots of different things available, and we're appreciative and thankful for anybody that supports us, across the board. God, I hope you're going to edit out some of my blabbering, because I'm thinking there's probably some stuff in there that doesn't make any sense.
We'll make it all work.
Well,
this has been fun.
That's the stuff I'll send in a press release to Blabbermouth.